Okay, okay. Okay, then a very good morning to everyone. Uh, as you must have noticed that it is the law of interim injunction. Um, Before we start, I have prepared certain slides, not a kind of detailed notes, but on those topics which we will be covering or which we will be discussing together. Just to have a basic thing as to what topic are we discussing. They are the only slides for that purpose, and there are certain important judgments which I have noted. Not all judgments on all the points or topics, but only the basic judgments which have been all throughout followed over a period of time are mentioned by me on those slides. So that is how we will discuss this law of temporary injunction. Uh, Next slide. Now, basically, we'll start with the concept itself. We all know essentially the word injunction, not defined. It is never defined under the Civil Procedure Code, or maybe for the purpose of Specific Relief Act. But nonetheless, we all know that injunction is what? Injunction is a kind of process which is issued by the court directing a person to do something or to refrain from doing something. That is a simple meaning of the term injunction. That is what we all know. We also know that basically when we speak about injunction, it has got two types. In fact, these two types of injunctions are given under the provisions of the Specific Relief Act itself, under section 36 and 37 of the Specific Relief Act. 36 and 37 basically provide for, it is under part 3 of the Specific Relief Act. And as far as 37 1 is concerned, it speaks about temporary injunction. What do we mean by temporary injunction with which we are concerned today? Temporary injunction, or what we know as interim injunction, is always an injunction which operates during the pendency of some legal proceedings. So it is that injunction which has a temporary effect. Now, that injunction may continue till the ultimate outcome of the judicial proceedings, or till further order which may be passed by the court. It may happen that the court may direct that this interim injunction shall continue for a particular period only during the pendency of the suit or the legal proceedings. It may also happen that the court may direct that this temporary injunction may also continue even after the judgment having been pronounced by the court, again for a limited period thereafter. So, of course, it is temporary, but it may have different connotations of temporary. It may be temporary pending the proceedings. It may be temporary even after the judgment, but certainly not perpetual. Temporary is always as against perpetual. When we speak about perpetual, or what we call it to be permanent injunction, it is always after the trial on merits of all the issues which may be arising between the parties. So that is what we call to be permanent. Permanent meaning thereby it is what is which is covered under a decree of the court, a final outcome whereunder something is directed to the party to be abided by for all times to come. That is what we call to be permanent injunction. So that is the basic difference, the basic fundamental difference between the two concepts. If we look at the object, why do we need such injunctions, particularly temporary injunction? The whole purpose is that the law requires that whenever a person goes into a court of law for the purpose of adjudication of some dispute, it is always expected that nothing new is to be introduced which would hamper or adversely affect the smooth process, the smooth trial of the legal proceedings. So the basic object is not to allow anything to be changed during the pendency of the legal proceedings as far as possible. It is not something which is a kind of a universal rule, but normal rule is, as far as possible, do not allow the things which were prevalent the day on which the legal proceedings were instituted to be changed so as to adversely affect the proceedings which are going on before them. That is the basic object of injunction. But one thing I must share with you at this stage is a kind of phenomenon which I have noticed not only among the law students, but amongst the lawyers also, as far as the wrong applicability of the word which is being used. We know under the Code of Civil Procedure, there are two concepts. One which we are discussing right now, namely interim injunction. There is another concept of interim stay. Now both the words are different. Both the words are different. For stay, we have got provisions, separate provisions, which is under Order 41, Rule 5 of the code. Order 41, Rule 5 basically speaks about grant of interim stay pending some appeal. So, when we say, many times what we find is that even the lawyers also use the word that a person had filed a suit and he obtained a stay. Question is, can there be a stay in a suit? When you speak about the word stay, there can be a stay of either proceedings or stay of some order. Now, when you are going by filing a suit, there was no proceedings pending. There was no order yet having been passed. What can be stayed in a suit? So, we must always keep in mind that in the original proceedings, like suits, what you are seeking for is not stay. What you are seeking for is the injunction, the interim injunction. So never use that word that in a suit we got stay. Sometimes it also happens that the suit is dismissed. You carry the matter further in appeal, let us say before the district court or the high court. In the appeal also, what relief, interim relief you would be seeking? Particularly in a case where the suit is dismissed. Many a times what we have noticed is that a kind of general relief which we seek for in the appeal or in an application for interim relief in the appeal. What we seek for is stay of the order, stay of the decree. If the suit is dismissed, and if you seek for stay of that decree in the suit, it is meaningless. It is meaningless. Therefore, even in such cases, when a suit is dismissed and you have carried the matter before the appellate court, you are entitled, even before the appellate court, to seek interim injunction pending the appeal. So that is the basic misnomer which we always must avoid. In such cases, we will seek only interim injunction. That is what I wanted to clarify at the threshold before we proceed further. Next slide, Archit bhai. Now, relevant provisions. The relevant provisions which would cover the entire topic. The relevant provisions, Archit bhai, the earlier slide, the second slide. The relevant statutory provisions are contained in threefold statutes. Basically, it is the Specific Relief Act, Part 3 thereof, which deals with grant of injunctions. Section 36 to Section 42 are the provisions dealing with injunctions, both temporary and perpetual. Then comes Civil Procedure Code, where we find provisions in the section 94 and 95. Read with Order 39, Rule 1 to 5. And there are appellate rules under Order 43, Rule 1R. Now we have got Commercial Courts Act also from 2015 onwards, where we find that if there is a suit having been decided by a commercial court, and if there is an interim injunction having been granted therein to be challenged, we have the provisions under Section 13 and 14 of the Commercial Court. So these are the relevant statutory provisions. Let us now move on to the next slide as regards the grounds which are there for the purpose of seeking temporary injunction. Of course, we all know basic grounds are there under the provisions of Order 39, which has got basic two rules, Rule 1 and Rule 2. But at this stage, we must be conscious about the fact that there are specified subjects which are covered under Rule 1 and Rule 2. As far as Rule 1 is concerned, it covers property. If the subject matter in dispute is a property, which would be, then it would be covered by seeking injunction under Rule 1. Threefold parameters are given, threefold grounds are given under Rule 1 of Order 39. One is, all are in respect of some apprehension. One is as regards some apprehension of damage or waste to the property in question. Other is removal of the property in question for the purpose of defrauding the creditors. And the third is likely dispossession of the defendant. All the three sub-rules are concerned, as we have seen, relating to property. Rule 2 deals with subject matter other than the property, namely breach of contract or any other injury likely towards the defendant or the party. That is covered by Rule 2. Therefore, fundamentally, when we go to a court of law, file a suit, what we have noticed is that generally we file a plaint, and what we generally notice is that we file an application for temporary injunction, which is generally considered to be Exhibit 5 proceedings, or before a city civil court, it may be Exhibit 6 or 7. What we do? We draft an application for interim injunction, ad verbatim saying, accept the prayers. What I suggest is that yes, the pleadings in the plaint and the pleading in the temporary injunction application would be the same as far as the factual background is concerned. But you will have to follow your case. You will have to follow your case under those parameters which are given under Rule 1 or Rule 2 of Order 39. Therefore, it is always important for us that after we have all those pleadings reiterated factually in our application for interim injunction, we are also required to have a separate paragraphs devoted to how do we fall under those parameters of either Rule 1 or Rule 2. Because merely saying that yes, these are the factual grounds which enables me to seek a final relief in the suit is not enough. Is not enough for the purpose of seeking interim injunction. Therefore, we must devote separate paragraphs before we actually make our prayers for seeking interim injunction as to why do we need, how do we say that if the interim injunction is not granted, any of those things which are mentioned either in Rule 1 or Rule 2 would occur. Specific pleading is also required for the purpose of seeking interim injunction. Not just saying that, all right, now that all the facts as are mentioned, the plaints are over, therefore I have got good prima facie case, balance of convenience in my favor, in irreparable injury would result, and therefore I am seeking. That has to be the basis of your pleading for interim injunction. These are the two essential grounds that we will notice under Rule 1 and Rule 2 of 39, Order 39. But we also find that there is an additional ground available. And that additional ground you will notice when we look at Section 94 of the Code. Section 94, Clause C, also allows you to have the interim injunction, temporary injunction, for a purpose to prevent the abuse of the process of law, or to see that the injustice is not perpetrated. So again, it is a kind of wider thing. Even if you are not allowed, even if you are not falling specifically under the provisions of Rule 1 or Rule 2 of Order 39, you can also resort to Section 94, clause C. So these are the grounds which you can raise for the purpose of seeking interim injunction. Now let us move on to the basic principles which we all know. Next slide, please. Basic principles, threefold, we all know. Threefold usage of words we always make, namely prima facie good case, balance of convenience, and irreparable injury. What do we mean by these three terms? In this case of AIR 1993 Supreme Court 276, which is a basic case which has discussed these three terms. When we speak about prima facie case, what this judgment says is that just mentioning that, yes, while granting the interim injunction, many a times we find, even in the judgments which have been delivered by the civil courts, what we find after discussing what do they see? They see, I mean, they mention in the judgment, when they mention the points for determination, these are the three general points which are being framed by the civil courts. But after framing those these three points by the civil courts, when we look at the discussions, when we look at the reasonings given by in those judgments dealing with interim injunctions, what we generally notice is that the entire discussion would be found to be on prima facie case. And as soon as the discussion on the prima facie case is over, there will be just one paragraph mentioned therein that, looking to the above mentioned reasonings, the plaintiff has got a good prima facie case, balance of convenience is in favor, irreparable injury would be suffered by the plaintiff if the injunction is not granted, therefore the following order. Question is this the good manner of dealing with the interim injunction application? The answer is no. Yes, of course, prima facie case has a great bearing on the entire resolution of the question as to whether to grant interim injunction or not. What do we mean by prima facie case? Prima facie case has not to be seen to be prima facie title. Both are different. What do we mean by prima facie case? Prima facie case is just a good case for a litigant to allow the case to go to trial. A good triable issue being raised by the plaintiff, which will enable the court that, yes, this is a case worth not only entertaining, but which raises good questions of fact, good questions of law, which are important to be adjudicated upon by leading evidence. That is what we call to be a prima facie good case for the purpose of enabling the court to go to a trial. But just saying that there is a good prima facie case, as I've indicated, is not enough. There are two further parameters. Unless those parameters are satisfied, it would not be a fit case to grant injunction, interim injunction. When we speak about irreparable injury, again the Supreme Court says that when you say that there is an irreparable injury, does not mean ipso facto that it must be an injury which can never be compensated in terms of money. When we speak about irreparable injury, what we mean is it is a material injury. It is a material injury means it cannot be, though it can be in a given case, it can be compensated, but it cannot be adequately compensated in terms of money. For example, supposing you file a suit for specific performance of an agreement to sell of an immovable property. Naturally, you'll be also seeking for relief for damages or compensation as required under Section 21.